Good evening, and welcome to those in the audience and the more than 70 people participating virtually. It is the 18th Annual Legislative Town Hall on Intellectual, Developmental, and Other Disabilities. Woohoo! I don't know of many other communities that can say they've done this for 18 years. Congrats. I am Christina Botero, Guardianship Coordinator with the Arc Pikes Peak Region. It is truly a privilege to be part of the planning committee responsible for sharing this exercise in democracy. Over the last 18 years, your voice has provided education to our elected officials about the challenges and barriers impacting your day-to-day life, including, but not limited to, access to services, access to transportation, access to affordable housing, and access to the community. It only takes one voice at the right pitch to start an avalanche. Diana Harding. We invite you to use your voice tonight to continue the avalanche of change. If this is your first town hall or your 18th, thank you for your contributions in changing the world. This event would not be possible without the incredible staff here at El Paso County Centennial Hall. Thank you, Blake and Nancy, and everyone else who helped set up the event. We also express our gratitude for access to the parking garage. So when you came in, either at the garage or at the door, you received a ticket from Jen or Jeannie. And along with the ticket that you received when you came through the gate, when you exit the garage, you'll need to present that ticket that you got at the gate and the voucher that you received from Jen or Jeannie in order to get out. So if you don't have a voucher to get out, let Blake know and he'll get you one. I would also like to thank Morgan and Melanie with Sign Language Network for providing sign language interpretation. Those joining us in the auditorium, the agenda, list of panelists and other guests, note cards, and ground rules were available when you came in the door. For those participating through Teams online, an agenda, list of panelists and other guests, and ground rules were attached to the email you received with the link. Please reach out for technical assistance through the chat function to access closed captioning and ASL interpretation. The town hall is Q&A format. Participants will have the opportunity to come down to the podium, raise your hand for the roaming mic, or write your question on a note card to be passed along to our moderator. Bruce and Blake are in the audience to assist with the mic and note cards. They're up there at the top. Please review the ground rules and adhere to them. To ensure equal access, we ask you to limit yourself to one question. If time allows, you will have an opportunity to ask additional questions. For those participating virtually, you can type your questions into the chat feature. The chat will be monitored and questions will be passed along to our moderator. Our moderator will help direct your question to the appropriate panelist. This evening's timekeeper is Tamara. She has visual aids to assist. A yellow card and verbal cue will be given at 2 minutes and 30 seconds. A red card and verbal cue will alert the speaker that their time is up at 3 minutes. This applies to our panelists and our guests. Thank you to all the volunteers. In addition to those I've already identified, I'd also like to acknowledge Ryan and anyone else I may have missed. If I missed you, I'm sorry. And finally, I would like to express my sincerest gratitude to Ginger Stringers and Tammy Ingram for your hard work and dedication to making tonight's event possible. Thank you both so much. In the words of the great Samuel L. Jackson, if you have an opportunity to use your voice, you should use it. It is my pleasure to introduce Wilfred Romero, Executive CEO of the Arc Pikes Peak Region.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you for not using that other Samuel L. Jackson quote that we talked about before. And camera, don't worry about the time. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Wilfred Romero. I am the CEO of the Arc Pikes Peak Region. And no, we're not the thrift store. However, we are the purpose behind the shopping and the donations. The ARC is part of the largest civil rights organization for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the United States. And we take great pride in our public policy efforts. And I am thrilled to see all of our panelists and the large audience we have with us tonight. I am honored once again with recognizing this year's presenting sponsor, Colorado Community Health Alliance, CCHA. I ask that the representatives from CCHA stand as we recognize your continued contribution to the legislative town hall and our community. CCHA up here in the back. I would also like to thank the Picnic Basket for providing refreshments for tonight's reception. We have several special guests in attendance and online this evening. I will first introduce those who are in attendance. Please stand as I introduce you in no particular order. Robert Hernandez, City of Colorado Springs, Office of Accessibility. Jackson Simmons, City of Colorado Springs, Public Works Transit Service Division. Len Rao, City of Colorado Springs, Mountain Metro Transit. And Andrew Gunning, Pikes Peak Council of Governments. We also have a few people joining us virtually. Chelsea Gondet, Downtown Partnership, and Yesenia Torres, El Paso County Department of Human Services. Yeah, give it up for those folks. I would like to thank you all for meeting with us this evening to learn more about the needs of people who are often overlooked and underserved in our community. Most, if not all of the guests who were introduced are included in the contact information sheet you received as you checked in this evening. The planning for this event starts almost immediately following the town hall each year. This event would not happen without the generosity, sponsorship, and dedication from our planning committee, our members, agencies, and board of directors. Please stand and be recognized as I call your agency name. Cheyenne Village. Give it up for Cheyenne Village. Discover Goodwill. Dungarvin. The Independence Center. The Resource Exchange. And my favorite board, the Arc of the Pikes Peak Region. And a special group I would like to welcome is our self-advocacy group, Include USA. Your time and dedication are evident in the true nature of the collaboration we see tonight. Thank you for helping to make the Pikes Peak region accessible and inclusive for all of our community members. I now welcome Colleen Head Batchelor, CEO of the Resource Exchange.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Colleen Batchelor, and I am with the Resource Exchange. We're the case management agency for El Paso, Pueblo, Park, and Teller counties. And we're also the early intervention program for El Paso, Park, and Teller counties. Tonight, you're going to hear a lot about many of the needs of the people that we serve and how our community can and should come together. This important annual event amplifies your voice to our elected officials, helping to create understanding, forge partnerships, and identify solutions. It also provides a platform for you to hear and learn from our elected officials about the many efforts already occurring or planned. This forum helps shape our legislative priorities in pursuit of our mission of empowering people, strengthening families, and building inclusive communities. Ed Bowditch is our moderator this evening. Ed has a master's degree in public policy from Harvard University and an undergraduate degree from Colorado College in history and political science. His professional experience includes having spent 3 years on staff at Legislative Council, 7 years as senior staff to the Joint Budget Committee, and 1 year as Deputy Director of the Governor's Office of State Planning and Budgeting. He possesses an unparalleled familiarity with the state budget process. We're proud to maintain a professional paid relationship with Ed as our TRE lobbyist, so our voice is heard at the state capitol on behalf of the people we serve. We thank you all for attending, and please help me welcome Ed Bowditch.
Thank you, Colleen. See if I can do this without. There we go. Thank you, Colleen, and everybody who's been up here before. It is a privilege to be back here as the moderator. I think the Pikes Peak region has a lot to be proud of with this event. There is a lot of political discord in this country, but to be able to have a town hall style meeting with direct but respectful questions for our elected officials is really a wonderful thing, and it ought to be celebrated. I appreciate all of the elected officials and administration officials who have given up their time today to be here, because I know how tough it is on your schedules when you get multiple events each day and each night. We've gone over the ground rules a little bit. I'll just reiterate, if people want to ask questions, and we'll get to the questions in just a minute, you can come to the podium, the microphone at the center podium. You can raise your hand with a card that one of our volunteers will pick up. And for people who are online, they can also submit questions that way. Tonight, in terms of our panel, we have Mayor Sharon Thompson from the City of Fountain. We have 4 members of the State House, Mary Bradfield, Regina English, Mark Snyder, and Stephanie Vigil from the State House. And so we're happy to have them. We have Commissioner Stan Vanderwerf from El Paso County, and we have Sally Clark from the Office of the Mayor, and from the administration, the Governor Polis's administration, and from the Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing, we have Bonnie Silva. So again, a round of applause for all the guests on the panel tonight. Again, we really appreciate you being here. To start right off, I'm going to recognize Ginger Stringer. She'll go first.
Thank you for your time. And as Ed mentioned, just taking the time to come is so valuable to all of us. I wanted to read something that I wrote, and I hope that you find it insightful, because we want to give you a little taste of disability. We're tired. We're tired of fighting for our babies when they're born and struggling to live. We're tired of fighting insurance companies to provide necessary support that we have paid them to provide. We're tired of fighting with family members that criticize how we raise our kids. We're tired of the look from other parents when our kids are melting down. We're tired of fighting with our spouses because of the grief and stress we both feel. We're tired of learning about special education, IEPs, SSI, and all the other EIEIOs. We're tired of seeing how different our kids are compared to the normal kids. We're tired of getting the phone calls from the school about what our kids did wrong. We're tired of seeing our kids lonely and without friends. We're tired of seeing how hard our kids work and try to do anything that comes without hesitation or effort for others. We're tired of going through milestones and knowing our kid won't do certain things. We're tired of watching other families and wondering why we have to go through this. We're tired of getting Medicaid and Social Security services, wishing we did not have to have them. We're tired of filling out endless forms and applications, gathering every bit of information as quickly as possible to wait months and years to finally get services. We're tired of trying to figure out all the acronyms and now the system of the adult system. We're tired of doing the same things we have done since our kids were born and watching our friends be empty nesters, travel, dine, and retire. We're tired of grieving every time we come upon a new opportunity, like coming off the wait list for the DD waiver and all the rules and regs that will come along with it. We're tired of being monitored by the state monthly and evaluated for the things we have done since our kids were born and maybe before the person monitoring us was born. We're tired of government agencies and focus groups that spend money to hire facilitators and design systems, a brochure and cool graphics yet disappear when the grant funding ends. We're tired of running around to get what we need, waiting days for return calls and wishing we could give up. We're tired of thinking who will take care of our kids and will we have done enough when we die. We're tired of being shackled to government systems when all we want is what's best for our kids. We're tired of being told we're in denial or we did this wrong or we aren't this or that. We're grateful to the state of Colorado and the support to serve our kids. Can I keep talking? I'm almost done. We are grateful to the state of Colorado and the support to serve our kids. We are grateful we live in a country that doesn't just put our kids on the street to die when they're born, and we're grateful to have the help, but we're tired. We need systems that are quick, easy, one and done. We need to be heard and not dismissed for just being parents. We need what is best for our kids, not one-size service that's funded for all. We need to have our child receive disability determination and not have to prove it annually, year after year, for Social Security, HCPF, and DHS. We need justice when our kids are abused but cannot point to the perpetrator in a court of law and verbally say what they did to them and thus lead to a conviction. We need the legislators to hear us and see us when we, the end users, experience issues when legislative decisions are made. We need checks and balances that are not so administratively heavy that case managers give up and find jobs that are balanced. CDPHE, HCPF, SSA, CMA, DOH, DHS, APS, we are tired.
Thank you, Ginger. And the planning committee decided that would be the kickoff statement, which I think is very appropriate for how a lot of people feel. We did receive some online questions so far, so I will start off with the first one. How does the state plan to reimburse families who paid out of pocket for services in healthcare due to the disaster that was care and case management, DHS lack of checking peak system for uploaded documents, case management redesign, or the public health unwind? A very direct question, but a very important question for anybody who's lived through this in the last year. Going this way. I think a lot of people are volunteering you. Bonnie, thank you.
Thank you for the very direct question, and thank you, Ginger, for your eloquent words to start off this evening. I think that the sentiments are shared by many, and I think guide those of us in our positions. I think inspire the work that we do every day. We want to create systems that make people feel hopeful and less tired. And I hope that by the end of this night, and maybe by the time that I retire, people have systems that make them feel less tired and more supported. So I'd like to start there, if that's all right. There was a convergence of issues that I don't think any leader would have saw coming that certainly impacted the people that we support and their families and their providers in ways that none of us anticipated. In terms of families that chose to pay out of pocket for services while Medicaid was pending, not reimbursing for services, we certainly have retroactive eligibility that should reimburse providers. I can't provide blanket statements across the board, not knowing what families paid, not knowing what breaks in services were in place. That certainly would be inappropriate of me. But we are certainly doing all that we can at a state level to make sure that where there were breaks in services, that we go back and we correct those. That where providers were not paid, that we go back and fix those circumstances, that we are rectifying those circumstances on an individual basis, on a state basis. We have escalation processes in place. We ask that you first work with your case management agencies. If that doesn't work, there are state level escalation processes that you can leverage where we can also assist you. Again, work with your case management agency and we will support you in figuring your individual situation out and coming to resolution.
Thank you, Director Silva. I think that one of the takeaways I'd get from that is the retroactivity for Medicaid. That could be an assistance to some people, maybe not work every single instance, but maybe that's something that can be followed up on. You're welcome to come to the podium.
Hi, my question has to do a lot with the same thing. So HCPF went ahead and put out on their site about stabilizing long-term support services and the reasons why they were unstable. But one of the things that they mentioned on there was that PARs could be extended while the annual PAR is being renewed, like if it's being delayed, if the renewal is not happening on time. But when I checked TRE case manager, checked with all of TRE, they have no idea how to do this. And the passes have no idea how to do this. And on the page, it says contact HCPF, which means nothing to parents because we have no direct contact with HCPF. So my question is if our case managers don't know and the passes don't know, how can the PARs be extended if the waiver is still active, the Medicaid's still active, the PAR just wasn't getting approved in a timely manner because whatever reason, either it wasn't submitted in a timely manner, which we know it's not always the state's fault. Stuff doesn't get submitted to you in a timely manner, but it is claiming that this is an option, but nobody seems to know how to make this option happen.
Director Silva.
I think it's me again. Thank you for the question. I think that that's a great one. And I think one that I can take back and look at the language on our website and make sure that we're really clear. So when we looked at the convergence of issues impacting our long-term services and support system, I think the first thing we wanted to do was make sure that services continued. Second to that, like to make sure that services continued, was to make sure that providers continued to get paid. So when I say that PARs could be continued, at a state level, what we did is we extended the PARs. So the reason that your case manager doesn't know how to extend the PAR or your PASA doesn't know how to extend the PAR is because at a state level, we went ahead and did that for everybody. So we need to go back and look at that language and make sure that it's really clear. It's an action we took across the board. We extended all of the PARs in place. So that way, if the case manager was behind and maybe needed some more time to complete their service plan and do the new PAR, we didn't run up against a situation where that member couldn't continue to get services and that provider couldn't bill. So hopefully that answers your question. And I think that's great feedback for us. I can go back and look at the language on our website and make sure it's a bit more clear. So I don't know if folks could hear that. The feedback to me was there are providers getting denials. And yes, that is correct. There is a variety of reasons where providers still, despite the fact that we've extended PARs, we have extended level of cares, which is required annually, by the way, by the federal government. Not everything's the state's fault. Lots of things are the state's fault. The having to prove your disability every year, even though you're clearly still disabled, also the federal government. But still, there are things that might cause a billing denial that, again, can be escalated at a state level and we could provide support with, that are legitimate reasons why a provider might not be paid, but we can work with them. There's lots of things that we did do that for most providers, right, that billing should go through and payment should happen and things should work across the board. Doesn't mean that all billing is happening without issue. I just want to reiterate that there are avenues to escalate, both for providers, both for case management agencies, if support is being needed. We're also monitoring provider billing. So if we see big dips in provider billing, then we know, oh, there might be an issue here where massive amounts of providers aren't getting paid, as a for example.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead. Up in the back.
Hello, good evening, and thank you for your time. My name is Brittany Rodriguez, and I would like to discuss the income caps with you today on Medicaid patients. I am permanently disabled on a long-term Medicaid waiver with a progressive disability. At the age of 29, my spouse is my full-time caregiver, utilizing the Medicaid waiver, and he provides this care with financial sacrifice and determination to make sure that I can stay in our marital home to receive care. My medical care, housing, and freedom to remain in the home heavily depend on this waiver to emphasize the importance of it. To say it bluntly, without having Medicaid and having this Medicaid waiver, I would not be alive today, not because of my own will to live, but because my life depends on our finances and access to Medicaid. This comes at a high cost. We are enduring forced poverty in a country that is having an increased cost of food, necessities, rent, medical care, and transportation prices. Like many other disabled people who are enduring forced poverty, it is incredibly expensive to have disabilities. In our situation, it seems impossible for us to achieve our dreams of owning a wheelchair-accessible van or an accessible home when we have income caps on our limits and on our resources. In addition to not being able to buy a wheelchair-accessible van or own an accessible home, we are having to let our dreams of owning a small business die because his resources are also counted as my resources. And because I am dependent on Medicaid with my life, we cannot obtain success. We cannot obtain the American dream due to income caps on resources for disabled people and their families. To the panel, my question is, how would you redirect policies regarding the current caps on income and resources for Medicaid waivers so that the suffering is ended for so many disabled Americans and their families who scrape by while facing forced poverty because of these restrictions? How can we pull ourselves up by the bootstraps if we can't even afford to save for the pair of boots? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Appreciate the question. That's a very important question. I know in the past we have had some representatives of the federal government here. I believe the Medicaid income caps are set at the federal level, but I will look to our resident expert, Bonnie, here. Perhaps you and I should switch places, but anyway, go ahead, Bonnie.
Thank you. And that was so eloquently put. I will say maybe I'm not supposed to have favorite Medicaid programs, but I kind of do. And in the state of Colorado, we do have a Medicaid buy-in program for working adults. And so if you haven't heard of that, it kind of breaks my heart because there is an option for you to buy into Medicaid waivers in Colorado if you are a working adult. That does allow for you to be gainfully employed and continue to access your Medicaid waiver. So Perhaps we should connect after this panel, and I can tell you a little bit more about that program. Again, it was something we enacted maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Again, recognizing that people with disabilities should have the option to be gainfully employed in Colorado. It does require you to buy then into Medicaid based off a sliding scale, but it is nothing comparable to commercial insurance.
And the Medicaid buy-in program, I believe, was passed by a bill from an idea that came up in this town hall maybe about 10 years ago.
There
And
you
then there
have
was a
it.
legislator who said, that's a great idea, sponsored the legislation, and we went on. Do we have a follow-up question?
My follow-up to that would be consider the disabled adults who cannot return to work because nobody will accommodate us due to our disabilities.
That's a very good point about employment opportunities for individuals on long-term Medicaid waivers. The one other thing I would say about that, there has been discussion kind of percolating around about a caregiver tax credit. That last year, the legislature approved a lot of tax credits. This year, there could be some room for some additional tax credits. And some people have talked about maybe for someone who is a certified caregiver, could get a tax break, a tax credit for doing that work in long-term Medicaid situations or other situations where somebody really needs a caregiver. So that is something that could come up. Commissioner Vanderwerf, you'd like to weigh in on that?
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate the questions, and maybe to expand on it a little bit and be a little bit more broad, but I'm just hoping that some of my comments here might help you. The first one is, I just can't believe that you're having trouble getting a job, and having a job is what gives you dignity. It allows you to solve your own problems with your own resources. It's super, super important to me. And we do have a Pikes Peak Workforce Center. I don't know if you've worked with them or not, but if you haven't, what I want to do is connect you to the Pikes Peak Workforce Center. The executive director is Tracy Marquez. They do have all kinds of programs, and they have opportunities to get people placed into jobs. I don't know that much about what they have for people with disabilities, but I know they'll work for you to help you find a job. I know for sure they have people coming out of incarceration to get them reintegrated back into society. They also have activities for seniors and all kinds of other folks. So they probably have a program that can help you out. So I'd say connect with the Workforce Center. And then the one thing I want to mention is I'd just love to have a conversation with you at a later time, or maybe a small group or whatever, because as county commissioner of the 5 commissioners, I'm the federal liaison. El Paso County has a full-time lobbyist in Washington, D.C. We've done a lot of great work along the lines of helping to keep Space Command here, which is good for the economy, and a whole bunch of other things, like getting money for the National Forest Service to reduce fire risk on the west side. So I'd love to hear what these are, because I can take that as the federal liaison to our lobbyists, and we can start doing some research and see what might be possible as far as making some adjustments or asking some legislators to make some adjustments, maybe get our delegation involved in that, which would be pretty awesome. But also our lobbyist for El Paso County, this is your lobbyist too, right? Is really good at finding grant programs. So there just might be something to find there that might be able to help you out. So I'd love to have that conversation with you later. Thank you.
And at the conclusion of the open public question and answer period, there will be an opportunity to talk directly with the members of the panel. I'd like to go to an online question next. Again, a pretty direct question. Vulnerable people with special needs and high magnitude needs, aggressive behaviors, self-injury behaviors, property destruction, have nowhere to go if they lose parental caregivers. But Colorado provides safe haven for people who break the law. How is Colorado going to fix this significant need? Any volunteers? Representative Snyder.
Thank you, Ed. Now, this is a new program. It was a bill that passed just last year. It was House Bill 241360, created the Colorado Disability Opportunity Office. I'm not sure where they are in standing that program up, but it is specifically designed to help Coloradans with disabilities to build a successful life for themselves and their families. It's kind of an emerging program, but I think we were seeing at the state level a much more rededicated effort into trying to address a lot of the deficiencies in our DDA community. I will say that Representative David Ortiz, who is not coming back, decided not to run for re-election, has been a champion. And you look at most of the bills dealing with disability law have come from Representative Ortiz. But I have great hopes that that office will be kind of a, we don't have an ombudsman in this space, but I think until we decide or can stand up an office like that, that's going to be your best opportunity at the state level, is to work with this emerging office.
Anybody else on the panel? Thank you. Next question. Yes, back to the audience.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being here tonight. My name's Michelle Williers. I'm the executive director of Peak Parent Center, which is the Parent Training Information Center for the state of Colorado, as well as the Technical Assistance Center for the whole Western region for parent centers. Also proud parent of a young man who's 21, deafblind, with intellectual developmental disabilities. And my question for you is, I'd like to discuss the future of our support systems for young adults in transition post the IDEA. What happens when funding or initiatives come to an end? How can we ensure community and stability for those that still rely on these resources so they can be effective in post-secondary success?
Any volunteers? Representative Vigil, thank you for jumping in.
Thank you, Ed. And thank you for the question. And I'm just jumping in, even though this is not an area of expertise for me necessarily. There are, I think, a lot more opportunities for us to have permanent residency, and I'm probably using the wrong term, but a permanent residence for young adults with disabilities. A lot of the challenge that I know we've run into already is that DHS needs to be able to regulate those in an effective manner without them opening, without licensing, and without proper oversight, because as you know, as we've heard already this evening, that the possibility for abuse is very high. We want to make sure that like really qualified and well-monitored individuals run places like that. And so I think sort of getting to a place where that regulatory mechanism is in place and is effective, but doesn't prevent facilities from being able to open at all, is going to be the sweet spot. And I know that that's ongoing. And I think like the best thing I can say right now is that it's on my radar, and I'm always watching for more solutions, but I don't have an easy answer for you today.
Next question. Yes.
I have more of a statement and just to tell you my story. My name is Sarah Norton-Kahn, and I've been a host home provider for 9 years with the same client. I'm connected to the disabled community through my own struggle with ADHD and dyslexia. It's tough for me to speak, so I'm trying to get over fear. I trusted that if my PASA said that a law had changed, that it was the truth. It was not until several years later that I discovered that PASAs would say a law, rule, regulation had been changed, requiring more documentation and oversight of the host home provider and the clients. Once I started to ask questions regarding the new law, rule, regulation, they were not able to reference such document. While performing an unrelated Google search, I discovered that host home provider oversight stakeholder work group. I was not informed of this group by my agency. One topic is trainings required for host home providers. I know the 2 agencies that I have been with use Relias. It's an online training program that PASAs completely control. In 2020, my client was moved from a level 4 to a level 3 without notice due to my agency and TRE not turning in the client supporting documents on time. I submitted all of the documents supporting the need to keep her at a level 4. This error took almost 2 years to correct without compensation. Medical history of clients that have lived in PASA group homes, where is it? Many of these group homes have caused additional diagnosis and medical diagnosis, and behavioral issues. The reasoning behind this would be, the reasoning behind this would be to hide the abuse and neglect or health conditions that clients suffered at the hands of the agency. I have no doubt saying this out loud is going to lead to a bigger target on my back. Sorry.
You're doing a great job.
I'm so sorry. Host-home providers are not treated as a member of the team. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson.
All right, just to continue for Sarah. Host home providers are not treated as a member of the team, but are merely a thing to control. Our clients become family. We create safe space for them to be themselves, no matter how weird or abnormal it is. Most host home providers have good intentions and are good people, but we have a fear of having their client removed on a whim, causing anxiety. I was shocked to find out while listening to the home oversight meetings that there truly was a blacklist of HHPs. My shock widened when I discovered that unverified information has been added to this blacklist. I do realize that the state is attempting to correct the inconsistencies in the blacklist and create due processes for HHPs. HHPs work 24/7, 365 days a year, many times without a break. They sacrifice their lives to care for their bonus family member, yet they are met with scrutiny and insinuations without explanation. These actions of the PASA sometimes continue for years without resolve. In 2023, I was informed that PASAs were being tasked with investigating HHPs. HHPs PASA hopped to remove oversight. Speaking for myself, that was not the case at all. I wanted support, understanding, and to be part of the team, and I wanted to know what was being said to me was the truth and not a lie to manipulate me or my client. HHPs move agencies due to agency greed, inconsistencies, harassment, intimidations, and threats of the blacklist. Pay daily percent taken 30 to 50%, R&B, room and board, thank you, was not separate. When HHPs spoke up, they changed their practice, but were not compensated for the years of improper payments. A person-centered care should include the documentation to be appropriate for the age of the client. When creating new laws to protect this vulnerable population, please take into account who is going to benefit for this change. Is it the disabled client?
Thank you so much for raising all those important issues. And I hope you feel this is a safe space for you to raise those issues. Being a host home provider is a very important role. And I think all of our organizations here deserve a lot of very high quality host home providers, and we need to celebrate you. Thank you.
Ed, real quick, she
Yes.
mentioned, and I want to make sure everybody on the panel understands, there's different levels of cares in these homes. I don't know if Colleen wanted to step up and explain it real quick, like a level 3 home, a level 4 home.
I can do that.
I know there's quite a bit of difference in what that requires of the host home provider, and I think that's important for people to understand.
Okay. My name is Susan. I've been a host home provider for 13 years now, and I was going to talk to you about something else, but I think you guys even know what a host home provider is and how we work, because if I wasn't one, I wouldn't know what it
Go
was.
ahead and give an overview.
So when adults with intellectual disabilities get off the wait list through TRE and get services, it's a very big day.
those referrals go out to what's called a PASA or a PASA, which stands for patient. So there's several in town, more and more and more. So those referrals go out there, and then the PASA tries to find one of us, a host home provider. Sarah is a host. Any other host home providers here? Yep, cool, good. So we're the kind of the frontline people. We take care of the clients. And so the PASA will come to us and say, we have this client, what do you think? The client will come, we'll visit them, interview, see if it's a good fit. For me, I require 2 stays prior to making the decision of them moving into my home. And then clients are anywhere from a 1, meaning they probably drive a car, but maybe need help balancing a checkbook or making medical appointments, but are pretty independent, all the way up to a 6, but I think there's a 7 now, I think I heard. But a 6 usually is potentially somebody who's a sexual offender because they didn't know, any better because they had a cognitive disability, or maybe they did. Or somebody that's a quad in a wheelchair that can't get out of bed by themselves, can't feed themselves, can't go to the bathroom by themselves, can't make their needs known. They're going to be a higher level care, which means we make more money, the higher level of care, because of the more work that they are. So our business is contract with PASAs. So we are small business owners as host home providers. Did I cover everything, Ben? You have any questions? So we're required to have trade names through the state. We have to carry insurance through the state. You have to only use the state insurance company. But that's who we are.
Very, very good summary. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Okay. And
So-
then you had a question.
Okay, yes. So I had some concerns this past year, because I've been doing this for a while, that we're kind of moving away from client-centered care, where we meet the person where they are and help them with what they need. And a couple examples these are just the ones that came to mind, where there's a new regulation for adults with intellectual disabilities that live in host homes. They have to have a lock on their bedroom door, and it has to be a keyed lock. So we're required now to put a lock with a key on the door. Otherwise, the clients do not have dignity, is the word. And it doesn't matter whether they even know what a key is or whether they're in a wheelchair and don't have the ability. We have to prove that they have access to that key to be able to lock and have privacy in their room. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, sure, it should be offered, and if it's specific for the client, they should have it. My client knows what a fob is, but has no idea what a key is and doesn't have the ability to use a key. Yet I have a key that I have to give him. Doesn't make sense.
You
Anyway,
say that's a new regulation?
it's a new regulation where we're required to put locked knobs on all of our
And I'm
clients.
sorry to interrupt you. I just want to be
No,
clear.
I don't mind. Mhm. Yeah, and I guess that's kind of my point, is we go ahead and go through the ridiculousness and the cost of it because we're not thinking and treating them like individuals, like what,
Let's,
We're discussing
Yeah.
up here that the people online can't hear the
Yeah.
comments being made from
yeah.
the audience, so they need to come.
So,
so
thank you.
it's a federal regulation that they have to have the lock on the door regardless whether they can use a key. Okay, here's really my concern. So we have a lack of respite providers for us, for our clients that have behaviors. So the online question that was earlier, I've had clients that have huge behaviors. I have a client that has huge anxieties. He was abandoned downtown, was homeless, was beaten, was left at Springs Rescue Mission. They took great care of him. TRE got him services right away, but the guy has serious anxiety. So he has a stable environment now. Any deviation to his schedule, he loses his mind. Knocked windows out of the whole car, and it's all anxiety. I never at the time felt like I was in danger, but he would just freak out. He would just be so scared. And there was absolutely no support for me or for him. So I had somebody dying. My agency told me, you have to take him with you. I had a funeral to attend. They told me I had to take him with me because nobody could handle him. No, I mean, there's no place for people with behaviors to go to be safe so we can have a minute. So it's been 5 years, 24/7, and no support. So my resolution is for TRE to potentially open a safe haven home where behavior clients can stay. I know I'm a retired nurse. I know that clients get left in the emergency room for families who are just at their wits' end, and it's unsafe for them to be there. But I think we need a facility where these clients can go and live and be safe with trained staff.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. And please note that some of the questions may not be appropriate for the panelists, but all the agencies that are here listening to everything. And I would also suggest that you talk to Brandy afterwards, because the question about whether locks were required or an option is key. And I think you could connect afterwards and explore that. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, you'll connect afterwards as well. Thank you. We're moving pretty quickly. Well, we'll go to Commissioner Vanderwerf.
So I would imagine that anybody up here on the panel would say the same thing, but I just want to say to the people that just testified, thank you for what you do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're taking on a big task. It's sometimes a thankless job, but you're helping somebody that otherwise would really be in a very difficult place. So I think it's important to lift you up and thank you for the work that you're doing. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would almost guarantee that a home care option is less expensive, maybe a lot less expensive than other options that are out there. So this is really a great way for a person that needs care to know somebody, have a little bit of love, hopefully, in that process, but also it's less expensive for everybody. And with regard to the law and the keys and all of that kind of stuff, this is just one of these unfortunate consequences that I think we all run into over and over and over again. There was probably some notable case somewhere else in the country where somebody was not given dignity, and the answer was make everybody buy a key. So because of one, well, I was going to use a word, but I'll just say one bad person, now we're spending millions and millions of dollars on keys and going through more processes. And this is actually really an issue and a challenge that I think needs to be, more attention needs to be paid to this. Because the solution from one bad actor is not make everybody behave a different way. They were not the problem. So we're actually, in that regard, causing cost, causing issues for people that didn't have that issue because of one other bad actor. It just seems to me maybe something that might be a little bit more appropriate that maybe we get the federal government to do a little bit more of is actually figure out a way to punish the bad actor for the bad action and not take it out on everybody else. I'll just make that point. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would like to go to a couple of questions we've received online, and I made the decision to read these verbatim. There are two related, similar issues. First one, how can we spend $1,500,700,000 on illegal immigrants, yet I struggle to find residential care for my child while on both the CHIRP and the DD waiver. We need to help our most vulnerable citizens first. The next one says, what is being done to give undocumented citizens access to Medicaid waiver services? There are many people with intellectual and developmental disabilities who were born and raised in the United States who completely lose services when they age out of transition services due to their citizenship status. Again, I don't want to turn this into a debate on immigration. I don't think that's why we're here tonight, but I thought I ought to at least respect the people who sent these in by reading them. I don't know if there are any answers. Bonnie, I guess I'll turn to you in terms of that last part of the second question about people who may not qualify for Medicaid waiver services due to their citizenship
Yeah,
status.
thank you. Thank you for those questions. I will tell you that the rules around Medicaid waiver eligibility, citizenship is a requirement, and it is a staunch requirement. It is both a federal and state requirement, and there's no flexibility there. And citizenship is also required for just regular Medicaid, with the exception of some very rare circumstances. And so their health has to be in pretty significant peril in order to get access to those health related services. And so right now, there is not an avenue for people to get access to Medicaid waiver services if they are not a citizen in this country. So I do think, though, I mean, the sort of comparison to sort of undocumented people here, access to Medicaid waiver services. What I can speak to is, I think, the enormous investment by our elected officials into our Medicaid waiver programs, into better ensuring that people with disabilities have access to much needed services here in Colorado. I've been in my position since, roughly 2019. During that time period, we have grown the budget for long-term services and supports from just over $2 billion to now over $4 billion. We have raised the wages for the direct support professionals that are in the homes providing this care from just over $12.41 per hour to now the data that we have that's coming in is the average wage for those workers is over $19.41. Again, it's really raising that bar, trying to make this an attractive field to get into from a workforce perspective, which is a little bit different than the small business owners that just stood up. And really, through the investment from the federal government, through the American Rescue Plan Act, Congress enacted and said, we're going to invest a lot of money into home and community-based services. Colorado chose to invest $500 million into provider rate increases, most of which went into wages. So a lot of money has gone into how do we make sure we have quality continuum of care to serve people with the most acute needs, with the highest level of behavioral health needs, the highest level of medical needs. How do we make sure that we have, whether it's residential support programs, in-home programs, really meet people where they're at? So I'm not saying we're there yet. We are certainly still on that journey of making sure we have those systems in place. But we're certainly far better off than we were in 2019.
Next question from the audience. Oh, Cindy, did you want to step up? Great.
He was maybe going with that.
People with disabilities typically fall into two categories. The visible disabilities like wheelchairs and other things. And then you have the people who are not obviously disabled, problems with organization, staying on top of things, and head injuries and the problems that go with head injuries. The people who have obvious disabilities have a 19-1 of getting a chance for supports, and those who do not have obvious disabilities have a 1 in 19 chance of getting support. And I'm one of those people who have invisible disabilities. And so it becomes harder for me to get any types of services like TRE. And I had to be evaluated by them twice. Oh, you got it approved. And well, yeah. And then because I got just the opposite. But people who are in that 1 in 19 category fall through the cracks. And it affects everything, not just your home life, your employment, your transportation, et cetera, et cetera. For me, it was employment. I had a job I liked, but because I didn't have any supports, I was the first one out the door. And you can be a good employee, you can be visible disabilities, you could have invisible disabilities. Those with invisible disabilities are told to get over themselves and quit whining and make it work, but that's not always true. It becomes very unbalanced and very unfair. And people who have invisible disabilities have more problems. Not obvious problems like mobility, but processing problems, head injuries, gaps in logic, and all that other chaos. But I just wanted to state what needs to be done to make this more balanced so that people with invisible disabilities get off the 1 in 19 pendulum and get more like, 50-50. And it's something that I run into. And what can we do to make this more fair and more balanced?
Thank you for your question. I think in the years I've been moderating, I don't believe we've talked about the different types of disabilities, including invisible disabilities. So, Representative Bradfield.
Thank you. I certainly have no solution for you. I just have a question. If you have an invisible disability, do you qualify for the same amount of rehabilitation as someone who is wheelchair bound, or we'll just stop there? The question is, are you eligible for the same amount of rehabilitation?
It probably depends, but Bonnie might be able to provide some response.
From a Medicaid perspective, the services that somebody qualifies for should be based off of their individual needs. I think that what she so eloquently spoke to is that maybe isn't a Medicaid response, is that our society continues to sort of marginalize people with disabilities, whether they're visible or not. And so they're not really part of the fabrics of our communities, not talked about, not sort of recognized, whether that's at work or in our churches, in sort of volunteer spaces. And so getting access to services is hard. It's not well understood. And especially if they're invisible, then you really have to then be the person to explain what does that look like to even the person assessing you. How is that manifested? And how your needs are best supported. And there's that extra layer of challenge. And I think that for me, the note that I took is, how are we training assessors on invisible disabilities, and how is that incorporated as sort of one avenue that we need to be looking at from a Medicaid perspective? But I do think it's a larger societal issue because unless or until people with disabilities truly are sort of welcomed within our communities, I think there always will be that barrier and that challenge.
Yes. Representative Vigil.
It was on. We had a hot mic that whole time. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And just for a brief background for the answer I'm about to provide is that I was disabled for a while by an invisible disability, and I had very much similar challenges, right? Employers not understanding, roommates not understanding. And, you know, if you come in the door with a mobility device, everyone can see what your struggle is. If you come in with the room and you're going through a rapid cycling phase, you don't have a way to explain your behavior to people, and the stigma and judgment is very real. And it did cost me a couple jobs in a row too before I went on disability insurance, and I completely understand that. I think we have a couple of different venues for finding good change for people through Department of Labor and Employment in Colorado that I'm excited about. We mentioned the Disability Opportunity Office already. But I think also digital equity and the Office of the Future of Work have a lot to offer, because what I found for myself was that as I started to move into long-term recovery, my best bet was to do gig-based work and have more flexibility. And I know that often that is the case for people. A lot of other folks I know with disabilities found that it was actually easier for them to start their own small business than to go try to get another job somewhere. And so in like the changing technological landscape, I think finding those connections for people who need them, with the way that technology is changing the way that we work anyway, will be a good path forward. But we really need more of that input that you provided.
Thank you, Representative Vigil. Next question from the audience.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Boone, and I also have an invisible disability, so that was kind of interesting to tee off with. So I feel your pain. It's when people see me, they don't automatically know that I have a disability. I have cystic fibrosis, which is a rare disease, and it also causes me to have cystic fibrosis related diabetes, which is not type 1 or type 2. Cystic fibrosis was a terminal illness not so very long ago. And I say was because a lot of us, I say 90% of us, received a miracle drug called Trikafta, and it's a gene modulating drug. I don't really know how to explain it. It sounds like a movie. I was dying of cystic fibrosis, in 2019. I was very sick, and I moved from Texas here because Colorado has the best respiratory hospital in the nation, which is National Jewish Health. And my doctor bought me time until I could get on this fabulous drug. This drug came out in 2020, right before COVID. Very lucky to have a lung disease and get a miracle drug right before COVID. Because everywhere I cough, people think I'm sick, and I just cough because I have CF. Life for me has been butterflies and roses in a way, because I was given my quality of life. I avoided a lung transplant, which I was being evaluated for 4 days after I got on Trikafta, and the doctors told me to go home and enjoy my little boy and enjoy my family and live my life. I'm not cured. I still have CF. I still only have 50% lung function. So it is hard to come to these things and speak. But as a patient, I kind of got kicked into high gear advocacy last year by something called the Prescription Drug Affordability Board. And you may or may not know about that. It's called PDAB. There's a lot of acronyms tonight. So PDAB was designed to try to lower healthcare cost. It had good intentions. It has good intentions. The people who are doing it have good intentions. They want to lower drug costs, kind of like, for example, insulin caps. Insulin caps worked in our state. Everybody got, they capped the price of insulin, and because there's a lot of people on insulin, we were able to cap that price. It does not work for rare disease patients like myself, only because my drug is super expensive, and I mean super expensive, $300,000 a year. I don't pay that though, which is surprising. Surprisingly enough, I do not pay I pay $0 for that drug. Mine is because of my insurance, but a lot of patients have because of the manufacturer of the drug has copay assistance programs. We're a very rare community, so there's less than 500 patients with CF in Colorado. When the PDAB put our drug up for review, at first we were happy, but then quickly we realized that the manufacturer was going to pull out of the state of Colorado if a UPL was placed or a price cap was placed on our drug, because they were not going to come down to that price. Therefore, and I have to get off, but therefore access issues is the unintended consequences for people with rare diseases. I want to thank you, Mary Bradfield. I'm sorry if that's because you sponsored a rare disease bill with us last year, and it did not go through, but I just want to thank you for your efforts. And I just kind of wanted to make people aware of what's going on and to get yourself in these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. And even if a lot of these are more statements than questions, That's okay because everybody on our panel is paying attention and they're all learning, and I am too. But all the decision makers are learning through all of these very important life stories. So thank you. Next question. Up front, yes, please join us.
Hello, my name is Kayla, and I'm here to make a statement. I do have a disability. I have ADHD, anxiety, and PTSD. So, hi, my name is Kayla. I'm an Indigenous person, so I qualify to receive government assistance. I'm truly grateful. This evening, I pray that my anxiety doesn't get in the way to speak to you. I wanted you to I wanted you to know if you, as lawmakers, can liberate on stronger expectations and requirements. Sorry, I have anxiety, guys. I'm going to start over. This evening, I pray that my anxiety doesn't get in the way to speak to you. I wanted you to know if you, as lawmakers, can liberate on stronger expectations and requirements, including amending laws when it comes to federal and state workers abusing their position. The workers I'm speaking of are Medicaid workers, case workers, Department of Human Services workers, and coordinators. For years, I was a victim of harassment and discrimination. This all started when I delivered my baby at Rose Hospital. The hospital reached out to Arapahoe County of Human Services and made strong allegations that my baby was being neglected. A CPS worker from Arapahoe County came out to my home and seen that I was a loving mother. The case was closed and was never to be opened again. My baby suffered a birth injury, but my kid's father and I were blamed and framed for her C6 and her C7 tore from her spine. I notified Arapahoe County Department of Human Services and showed them evidence that my baby suffered her injury at the hospital. I showed them an MRI and doctor notes stating that the injury happened at birth. My medical billing information was altered, showing I delivered at a hospital I've never been to. My child records were altered, and midwives and doctors' information on my medical records are not on the correct records. When I spoke to Arapahoe County of Human Services, I started receiving harassment. My medical and SNAP would be turned off. I was not allowed to speak to the director. After years of emails demanding that someone listen to me with evidence, I was assigned to one person. I was under investigation for years, all because I spoke the truth. I moved my family to the Springs to stop harassment. But Arapahoe County Department of Human Services notified the Resource Exchange, and I was again under investigation. This stopped my services. This was a problem I experienced. The deputy county attorney arranged a meeting so we could discuss the battle of discrimination. He apologized about the harassment. He also told me he would investigate the breach and promised the treatment would never happen again if I moved back to Arapahoe County. But then brought up allegations that simply was not true. I received coercion. Mr. Valentin told me he investigated the mayor, the governor, public officials, and even the attorney general. I was extremely intimidated. Minutes after leaving his office, I received a call from Voyager and the Resource Exchange saying I can now start services. Mr. Valentin told me there was something in the system to stop me from receiving benefits. He told me he would send out text messages to lift anything in the system to stop me from receiving services at the Resource Exchange. He created the problem and also fixed it. The Resource Exchange caseworkers knew of this treatment. I explained to the caseworkers why I left Arapahoe County and what I experienced. The caseworker replied saying I'm not alone. Again, I was not being heard. I now suffer from PTSD and depression. The connection the department has with other entities can have pros and cons. In my case, it was both. I've now picked the bad apples off the tree and hope that you all can create a law to track complaints on workers who have abused their positions in the workplace. My services are now active. I'm truly stronger now, and I'm happy with the Resource Exchange and El Paso Department of Human Services. Please create a law and a disciplinary system setting standards for citizens with disabilities and others who are affected by misconducts, abuse of power, and bad apples. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for wrapping up. And thank you for your statement and wrapping up. And I'm glad things are better now through that journey. Don't know if there's a response there or if it was more of a statement. Commissioner Vanderwerf?
Very briefly. Thank you for testifying, really. And by the way, I like your shirt, This Mama Prays. That's awesome. Looks like you got some family there. That's fantastic. Okay, and now I just have to ask the question. Could you introduce your family, just identify who they are? Thank you very much.
Thank you
One
for your
last thing,
statement.
I appreciate, sometimes you work in one county and for whatever reason, it just doesn't work out. But I'm glad you moved here. You mentioned something about you're happy and satisfied with the El Paso County Department of Human Services. That's fantastic. For those of you in the audience that don't know, we actually have 350 caseworkers working in that Department of Human Services. It's one of the largest in the state. So there's a lot of caseworkers in that organization to help people out. And I'm so glad that they've been able to help you out. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Back to a few of the online questions. And again, I want to make sure I get to some of these. Colorado Behavior and Learning Group is the only company that provides applied behavioral analysis to care for my boys. ABA services needs to be extended past 21 years. Individuals with high magnitude behaviors of aggression and self-injury and property destruction need a lot of services for life. Again, just wanted to make sure that was on the record. Next one. Can we expand Medicaid dental care to ensure people can have beautiful smiles and healthy oral care? Next question from the audience. We've got a question. Yes, can we bring a microphone? Well, a microphone's coming.
Is coming.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Give me a second.
All right.
I have a certain race, actually a problem probably many people have run into. There's only 2 apartments buildings with elevators in all Colorado Springs I know of. That those are disabled who can live in apartments. If they apply, they might qualify every single way. If they can't get an apartment, they have their choice. What's in the first floor? There must be some way to break through that bottleneck of that future-wise. It can't be done retrograded. Future-wise, get inducements, enhancements, something to make neighborhood builders want to build those apartments with elevators.
So we haven't heard as much about housing and housing availability tonight as we have in the past, but that's a very important issue. And about accessible housing. The state, I know, and the local governments have spent a lot of time on housing policy, but accessible housing, I think it's fair to say we cannot rely on the free market to provide accessible housing. It needs to be something that is strongly encouraged or even mandated by the governments at some level. My own opinion, whether it's right or wrong. Anybody want to respond to the question? Not to my opinions, you can respond to that too. Representative Vigil, and then Sally Clark.
Thank you for that. And I'll echo a bit of what Representative Snyder said earlier about our colleague, David Ortiz, who's on his way out. He has worked a lot on this. And unfortunately, we had a few bills that came into our housing committee on the House side and died there because we couldn't get the buy-in, couldn't get the votes for it, couldn't get it funded, whatever it was. And I would agree 100% with what Ed says, that the market alone will not take care of this. It has to be incentivized or subsidized somehow. I am a big fan of doing some amount of mandatory inclusionary development right? At least the first level has to be, what do we call it, a type A or a type B, fully accessible. And even a step beyond that, which would be even better, just be barrier-free universal design where everyone is in. And that means shifting the building codes towards being, if not perfectly accessible for everyone, at least adaptable, right? Because you should at least be able to adapt every unit to make it fully accessible. So I think there's a lot of work to do there, and I don't know who's going to pick it up. I might have just accidentally volunteered myself as tribute, but we do need to start moving forward on some of those policies that didn't clear committee before.
Yes, thank you. Sally?
Thank you.
Sally
And
Clark.
I am not the housing director for the city, but I have a few notes here that Katie Sunderland, who's our acting housing director, provided for me. So I just wanted to address a couple of these things. You know, affordable housing and housing in general is at an all-time need. So it's not just the disability community, it's everyone in our community. Yours is just a unique situation. And so the city has a fee rebate program that incentivizes the creation of additional units accessible to those with mobility disabilities and visual and hearing impairments. And as a baseline, all federally assisted projects with 5 or more units, projects that we use our home funds in for new construction, are required to provide 5% of the units, or at least 1 unit, to be accessible to those with mobility disabilities. And in addition to that, 2% need to be accessible for persons with hearing or visual disabilities. So the fee rebate program incentivizes developers to add additional units for people with mobility disabilities, in addition to those with hearing and visual impairments. There is a larger rebate of development fees for additional units with these modifications. And then in addition, we have new multifamily, affordable, and attainable housing developments that are eligible for a fee rebate program. And that includes universal design principles. There's 7 design principles, and that is another program. So we have several within the city that really try and address those disability issues. It's not an easy answer, and it's not the all solution to everything, but we are doing our best to try and working in tandem with other agencies, nonprofits, those that are trying to provide those additional housing options.
Thank you, Sally. Yes, Representative Snyder.
Thank you. Just at the state level, I think it was back in 23, we had 2 bills that passed and were signed by the governor. One ensures a legal recourse. It strengthens the penalties for places of public accommodation that don't comply with the requirements. I know that may not specifically apply to the situation you're talking about. There was also another bill in 23, 1296, that created a disability rights task force. And so they're looking into all types of issues like that. I apologize, I haven't caught up with their work, but happy to look into that and update you on the work of that task force.
Very quickly, we'll break our rules. We've had 3, but go ahead, Commissioner.
I'm so sorry. I didn't know there was a rule of 3, so my apologies. I did want to also just mention, just very briefly, one program that the county also has, and that's we actually have been sending out grants for different types of work. Now, this is not multifamily housing, but in single-family housing, helping people with disabilities stay in their homes. And we've been last 2 years in a row providing grant funding to Brothers Redevelopment. Some of you may know who they are. And they help build ramps and wheelchair access, adding grab bars and showers, removing trip hazards from floors, and doing things that just make a home a little bit safer for somebody with mobility disabilities. And that's been very, very helpful. We've been doing that for a couple of years now, and we have that as a grant program. It's been ongoing. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I appreciate the question about housing accessibility. And it really will take a partnership between the local government, the county government, and the state government to continue to make progress. And again, all of our members up there are listening to this and learning from it. We have a few more minutes here. Other questions? Go ahead to the podium.
Thank you so much, panelists. My name is Danielle Wininger, and I am your Miss Pikes Peak 2025 with the Miss America organization. It is my absolute honor to be a representative and advocate for my community service initiative of Spoonful of Support, or advocating for those with chronic and invisible illnesses and disabilities. And because of that, I want to challenge all of y'all on our panel to walk a mile in our shoes. This week is a week without driving through the partnership with America Walks and Strong Towns. As somebody who primarily uses either active transportation despite my invisible disabilities, or uses public transit in our Mountain Metropolitan Transit System, that I know firsthand just how much that individuals in our community with mobility disabilities, intellectual disabilities, and so many other facets of their life that impact their mobility and access across town, that I want to see what our city, our region, and our state is doing to truly make this a more accessible place for people of all abilities to live and thrive. I do have a few comments about how I do acknowledge that we are making such huge improvements in accessibility, whether that is creating things like universally accessible playgrounds, increasing opportunities with our community programs like with the TRE, increasing funding for medical facilities, as well as improving disability services. However, there is so much more that needs to be done, both in terms of funding, advocating on the legislative level, and at a civic level here in Colorado Springs and our other communities across the Pikes Peak region. Finally, especially because I did want to make this mostly a conversation about accessible transit, since this hasn't really been addressed at this town hall, that I do want to know specifically what we are doing to make our transit network, our business districts, our towns and our neighborhoods, as well as places like our parks and trails, actually accessible and pleasant for people with mobility and issues. Because not only do we have so many places across town that are only accessible by a car, or by about 2 or 3 transit changes on a bus, that we also have so many missing curb cuts, so many broken curb cuts in places where people with walkers, people on bikes and on scooters cannot access places, much less people in wheelchairs and with other severe mobility needs. So other than public input through apps like the Go Colorado Springs app, where people can, through the own goodness of their heart and noticing things on the ground level, that they can say that, hey, we need this thing fixed. That other than that, what are our representatives, our council members, our commissioners, and people actually doing to make sure we increase and make our streets safer for everybody? Thank you.
Sounds like a question for Mayor Thompson.
Okay, finally, something that y'all can deal with the big stuff. I'll take the little thing. So I've done 8 years on Fountain City Council as a council member and now mayor. And one of the things I did, first things I did was went around some of the parks and pointed out our non-ADA accessible things. And we now have an ADA director in the city of Fountain. It always was like a checkoff box, but now we actually have an official person that's trained. Her name is Rosa. So if you're in the city of Fountain and you have something with trouble with disabilities, please call Rosa or email her and she'll be happy to help you. We also have the app for Fountain. I brought a bunch of cards tonight if anybody wants it, if you're walking around and have it. And it GPS is right the location if you're right there, which is great. And what we've done is in our ADA plan is as things need to be replaced, our ADA coordinator has to be part of that plan. So when our Parks Department decides to replace a swing set in the park, they have to meet with her and get those standards up. We can't tear our parks down and start from beginning, right? But as we do improvements, that's when we make sure our ADA coordinator is in the room with everybody and from every plan, really, and being a part of that plan. So that's super, super important. I know Colorado Springs, or you county, I think you switched to county? Okay, you're with the city now. Okay, when I first met you, you were with the county, I believe. He actually came down to Fountain when we were beginning it and gave us a lot of great ideas for how to do it. I've also been working with Lon, and who's with Mountain Metro, and she met with me and with the Resource Exchange. And if you have to do that form to renew your ADA card with Mountain Metro, they came to the table and recreated that form. Now, I got in right before my son needs an ADA card. He got in there right before the new form came out, so you don't have to go to your doctor pretty soon in the future and get your doctor to redo that form every 4 or 5 years, the card? 3, okay. Time goes by. So that is taking another form off of you, because I went to them and I go, we live in a world of forms, please take one away. And they listen to us. So when you're in the system the first time, you'll have to do all the forms. And but that's some exciting stuff I see, and it seems simple, but it was complicated, right? But I really appreciate Mountain Metro coming to the table like that and making it a little bit simple for us. And all our buses in Fountain are ADA accessible. And we're coming up with a great new route sometime next year when King Super's open and giving you more transportation.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of other brief responses because I want to fill in one other question. Sally Clark and then Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Ed. So I think Mayor Thompson already sort of pointed to our city folks here who are sitting right there. We do a lot with regard to transportation. I'd love to get together with you. Danielle, I think your spoonful of support is a great effort. And to paraphrase our mayor, Yemi Mobilati, we see you. And we recognize that there are issues that sometimes we don't see because we're not directly involved. In terms of our transit system, we are doing our best to adapt and be as adaptable as possible to serve not only the disability, the developmentally disabled, but all disabilities. And thankfully, I was here when Rob was here, and then I went over to the city, and Rob's over there. So he's one of our greatest things to help us make sure that we're adaptable. But we want to serve as many as possible. And there are actually a few questions that came across that were shared with us in advance that the ability for people to bring more than 2 bags of groceries on. There was one about, I think, a question about a baby carrier and trying to get that on. So we have space availability, but there's also some restrictions. In addition to being able to buy an all-day pass without having to buy individual tickets, I think those are important. And as you mentioned in our Parks Department, we have a therapeutic recreation program that's specifically for arts, culture, and community integration, sports, and social enrichment for those with disabilities. And I'd love to meet offline with you and talk to you more about all the things we're doing, and then bring in the folks that actually run those programs to tell you more. And thank you for bringing those up. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to both of you. And I would love to partner more in the future with any and all help in advocacy and in action.
Thank you. Commissioner.
Yes, thank you very much. And the county has done a lot of work in this arena as well. We've done a multi-million-dollar investments in ADA across the county. But actually what I really want to talk about very briefly is the County Parks Trailability Program. And I do see some heads nodding yes, so a few of you do know, but many of you might not know. But about 2 years ago, we started the Trailability Program, and that started with these wheelchairs that look like four-wheel drive wheelchairs. They are really cool. I want to get a ride in one day. And they're able to allow a person that has extensive mobility problems to go travel around on the trails in Bear Creek Park, and we are expanding it. And the gentleman that brought the idea to us, he was himself paralyzed from the neck down. He did a wonderful job, a great guy. He's an excellent speaker. We've had him speak at park events. And we liked him so much, we appointed him to the El Paso County Parks Board. That Parks Board meets on this dais. So we put a ramp in for him, which is right back behind us here, so that he could access the seats here. And that has now grown into an additional addition that we've got now in Bear Creek Park, and it's for people who are blind. So we now have a trail in El Paso County for people who can't see. There is a trail that's in good shape, so there's no tripping hazards. Then it has a rope with knots on the rope. And when you follow the rope and find a knot, there's something you have in your hand. You push a button, and it tells you what's around you. And there's about 15 of those knots on that trail, and it's really, really wonderful. So we are improving access for people with specific kinds of disabilities as well in El Paso County Parks. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And Representative Behill.
Thank you, and I appreciate you elevating the week without driving. I am on the week without driving challenge. It's not actually that much different than the average week for me because of how I get around, but I do take the challenge every year, and I always encourage my fellow electeds to do the same. You asked about what we're doing at the state level as in regards to transportation equity and accessibility, and I wanted to mention something I'm working on to once again attempt, we weren't able to get it done this last year, to tap into some new funding for vulnerable road user improvement projects. So this is like our daylighting and pedestrian refuges at crossings and all different kinds of things to improve the design so that we're not reliant on drivers never making mistakes, because that is not a realistic expectation when people drive motor vehicles. And we know that because you and I both can get around on foot and outside of cars in our city. So that is something I'm going to be working on. Again, it does involve a higher registration fee on heavier and bigger trucks. And sometimes that is a tough sell. Not everybody wants to go along with that. But if we can make that enabling legislation and encourage counties like ours to make use of it, then we can start to make some progress on those things.
Thank you. We'll have one last question from the audience. Yes. A little closer.
If that was a unique problem or if there's other people experiencing it. And the real problem we had was with the automated messages. Any change that happened in his life from Social Security or Medicaid, we'd get an automated message that half the time was not correct and caused us a lot of worry.
And that's from the Peak Health website?
Yep, the Health First website.
Peak
It's the
Health
Medicaid
First
website, the DHS website.
Goes through DHS.
Yeah, and I was wondering if that's a unique thing. My second question is my son's transition to CDAS, and the logjam is with the case managers all the time. And I think my sense is that they're overwhelmed, and that anytime we have to do we wait for anything, the big problem area is always for them to get back to us, and they just seem like they're just totally swamped. And I was wondering if you all are aware of that, or you're doing some things about it. One of the things they have is when we call up, we have a problem. Our case manager says, if you have a problem, if we don't hear back in 3 days, call my boss. And then so we did that, and that they have her boss had a same message. If you don't hear back from me because they're overwhelmed, I think, call my boss. And so it just seems like that is a real problem if we're experiencing, and I think many people are too. So those are the two things that I would like you guys to be aware of.
Okay, thank you. First of all, on the Peak Health First website.
I had left it on for so long and I finally turned it off, which maybe I shouldn't have, but thank you for your questions. And at first, let me just apologize for your experience. I hadn't heard that those were issues, but I will take that back to our eligibility team and just make sure that it isn't more widespread, and just make sure that there isn't something more broad going on. So thank you for that feedback. And I will just say in terms of case managers, I don't think that's unique to Colorado Springs. I do think case managers are overwhelmed. I started at the beginning that, there was a convergence of issues that have impacted our long-term care system, the end of the public health emergency that required everyone in the United States to be redetermined for Medicaid, which happened at the very same time that we had to come into compliance with a conflict-free case management rule that we had been working on implementing for a decade, and we had no more runway. So all at the same time. That happened at the same time that we had to launch our new IT system that, let's just say, didn't go well. And that's probably an understatement of the year. There was quite a few, I think, bumps in the road with that required workarounds specifically for our case managers. And so the good news, I'm going to silver lining it, is that it's temporary, right? So it is temporary. We, at a state level, have provided funding, right? What can we do to provide bonus payments, retention payments? What can we do to sort of support them across the state, not just in TRE, right? What can we do to provide regulatory flexibility? So where we could provide that regulatory flexibility, we are in a temporary way. And that doesn't necessarily alleviate the overwhelm because it's still there. But we are working hand in hand with our case management agencies to say, okay, the work still has to get done. How do we work with your individual organizations? Because the challenges are unique within each case management agency. So what you might experience here is not the same as what maybe is being experienced in Montrose. And so that local control, local approach is very important in Colorado. So we're trying to have a statewide arm around it and also have some individual flexibility where that's necessary. But I also want you to hear it's temporary. Sort of there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We don't anticipate this will be experienced forever. In fact, I know it won't be your experience forever. We do anticipate that things will shore up and that the backlogs will be reduced and that it will be back to business as normal and calls returned reasonably within a few business days.
Thank you, Bonnie. At this point, I'd like to end the official question and answer period. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank our interpreters who have been here tonight. I'd like to again thank all of the panelists who gave up their time to be here tonight. They heard important issues. These are issues impacting people's lives. They are all better educated now about some of the things that communities are doing and some of the work that still needs to be done. I would invite them. Hopefully they can stick around for a few minutes and people from the audience can talk to them directly. My last thanks is to the audience. For all of you to come out here tonight and all of you online who submitted your questions, it shows how much you care about these issues. And again, thanks to everyone on behalf of the organizations. Have a good evening and hopefully our panelists can stay here.